All right, this is the SE Kefka Finals, Game 1 between Delial and Vid. They've got here in quite different fashions. Delial has been, I think, playing some of the best triple triad of his career, which is saying a lot. Just about every game, he has given analysis after the game that is just exactly what the solver says. Just on the dot, like, here's the critical line, here's my evaluation, there's this move at the end, and just been correct. Vid, I have not seen as many games on the run during the run. Now, I have heard that the match with Akiyama in the semifinals, which I am very impressed he won, was very badly played, and that both players were repeatedly finding wins for the opponent. Sorry, one other programming note is I'm going to be eating during this video because I was eating lunch when I saw this go live, so yeah, I'm gonna be pausing regularly to take a bite of food, but I did want to give the intros quickly. I didn't really prepare. I assumed there would be more time for me to be ready to talk about this match. This is the second time Delial and Vid have been playing a finals in the return. Delial did win the first one, but Vid is obviously an extremely dangerous player. I think Vid, just really remarkably across different formats of play, is just a very strong contender. He just made the closed finals of Batsu. He was the first winner of a closed tournament on the site in Garland. He was also the winner of Nanaki, a really strong open tournament. I've talked about this in the past, but if you look at the final eight of Nanaki, it's quite likely the strongest final eight ever, and Vid was able to take the title there. Just really, really strong tournament. And we've also recreated the game Vid won for the finals game, and there's a decent chance that we lucked out, and it's one of the coolest finals games wins that have ever happened, if not the coolest. And it happens to be one we have the records of, and you can probably go find that somewhere in my archives if you really want to. So, another thing about Vid is his style has changed quite drastically over time. And the last time he played Delhi in a finals, one interesting thing that happened was in what I think was the decisive game he lost. He was very pleased with his position. It was a losing position. He didn't know that. It was very complicated, but it was very complicated. He had a lot of combo potential. There was a lot going for him in the position, and that was the kind of position he was trying to reach. Now, Delhi played that game flawlessly, and Delhi won that game, but I think it speaks to that Vid is going to create complications, and hence the name Deranged Lunatic. But also, if I had assumed Akiyama would just win in the semis, for what it's worth, because I had assumed that Akiyama would be able to handle the complications that Vid creates. But Vid creates complications at such a, let's go with the word deranged level, that they were both missing stuff. And I think you're going to miss more stuff the more kind of ridiculous calculations you have to do. The harder all the work is, the less prepared you are to do more work. It was telling that, like, Akiyama at the end said, it's over. I'd like to go back and look at that match at some point. I'm also supposed to go back and look at the Addy versus Turds quarterfinals at some point, and I intend to do both. But for now, I thought we should keep up with the live games and just say Vid is a very interesting player who creates kind of unique problems for his opponents. Delhi also creates pretty unique problems for his opponents, but I think Delhi's style has also varied a bit over time and depending on opponent. Okay, so Vid had three corners for nine. He chucks one of them in one. This is a very logical kind of play. There is the question of which of the four cards you want to hold on to. If there's a lot of sevens facing down and right, then this one seems really good. But you'll notice between the two hands, there is exactly one seven facing down or right. So you can understand why he would not put much value on maintaining this card. I'm going to pause the video for a sec so I can have a little food. All right. One thing that's always worth checking is just what are the recaptures, because there are actually fewer recaptures here than you might think. For instance, Vid only has two recaptures in two, his 7537 and his 8247. Delhi does not have safety in 3 next to that. 6284 is covered by 7537, so I guess depends on what card is used to recapture, but it is just worth noting. You might be able to run Vid out of power in this direction. Games against capture bots kind of come to mind where they attack a starter and you find, oh, I had to use 8247 to recapture, and then, oh, I had to use 7537 to recapture something after that, and suddenly my remaining two cards are just not good enough to convert the win. And so you could see some potential limited power there. What about recaptures from 4? More options that way. I don't see any combo potential against any of the recaptures, so let's say he probably has sufficient recaptures that it's somewhat unlikely Deli will attack it immediately. We should also note that Vid has at least a 7 in every direction, but his worst direction now is probably kind of left and maybe up. Because to the left it's 7741. Oh, down it's 8441. Down is a problem. Makes sense he went high. To the right it's 8852, and up it's 8771. So Vid's best direction is up, his worst direction is down. However, it can be hard to have any combo play against the 1884. If you can combo the backside of that, then Vid will have massive problems going down, but as is, perhaps he shall not. Well, rather than think, we're going to pause again because my food is getting cold. Alright, Deli hasn't moved yet, but I think if you look here for kind of some way for him to create a difficulty for Vid, it's kind of difficult to do so. 3, 7, 6, 6, and 7 is one of the few cards Deli can take back super cleanly with a plus wall and 8, but Vid has that plus wall too. 8247 has the sufficient 7-4-ness to cover it. And the other kind of 8 sticking out, Deli just doesn't have coverage of. Something like 4847 or 5835 and 1 would be nice, but 1 has been blocked. So he ends up going for 3. But if Deli goes for 3, which is not to say it is wrong at all, I think we have to consider Vid's opening corner quite well chosen. Because the game has moved into an upward direction where it looks like, level 6 is always a really hard level to get your cards to work together. But this might be something where Vid's cards do have some play. Now, one thing I noticed in the past, this was years ago now, but I looked through a bunch of Vid's losses, and I noticed there were lots of games where he would see an adjacent corner, and there was a move in the in-between square that, like, maybe didn't lead to any advantage, but pretty clearly led to, like, a tie without much danger. And Vid would reliably go in the equivalent, sometimes it's rotated, but the equivalent of 7 or 9 here. I don't think 8, I think 7 or 9, the 3 corners, and was just losing a lot of games out of that. So, I mean, I look here first anyway, but especially with Vid, I'm sort of immediately curious, is 2 a functional thing here? And you kind of have to assume Deli has some good L's here. But maybe it's not so clear. Any capture he does in 4 does not set him up in 5, because the only card that could go in 4 that would set him up in 5 would be 4847, but that does not capture 1. Deli's plan is presumably to play 6, 2, 8, 4, and 6, and we can immediately see he's got a good eye for synergies, because that does set up 4847 in 5. Which is a real point. Yeah. So Deli is saying, if you go in 2, I can not only set up an L securing 3, and securing it, not just like blocking it in a way potentially susceptible to combos, but just winning it. And setting up a serious threat in 5, and I will continually have threats in 4. Which means I think it is very hard for Vid to go in 2 here, and he probably shouldn't. Which might be good for Vid, because at least this past Vid, which is not necessarily representative of his current skill set, would have a weakness of missing moves in 2, I think. But here, there's probably not a move in 2 to miss. It is kind of hard to think where else you're going to set up, though. One move that comes to mind, and I don't think is any good, but is at least vaguely amusing. Nope, not even amusing. Ignore me. You don't have the combo setups for what I wanted to do. Sometimes I was thinking sometimes you just gotta kind of get rid of everything and just go in 5 and set up as much combo potential as you can, and I was noticing that Deli does not really have that many cards that can go in 2, and that you can kind of force some combos if you play a 7 up in 5, then 4847, if it goes in 2, will accidentally flip 5 and be very susceptible to combos. So suddenly the only card that can go in 2 is 5835. But only one card that can go in a square is sufficient to have a card that can go in the square. And I'm not sure either of the cards with 7 ups were setting up the combos I would need to justify this. So probably not a good idea. 6284 really is very good in both squares for Delhi. Hmm. So one idea, maybe a little silly. Okay, Vid does block 2. Wow. Okay, so one idea I wanted to mention that was no, it was a terrible idea. Jesus, I'm gone. All right, so let's pretend I never said anything, and you will never know what horrendous idea I had. Vid does block 2. This may still be correct. It may be there was no kind of sufficient play in 7, 8, or 9. His cards did look very awkward in those squares. I didn't see like a clean way to play this. So he just takes 2, which is gonna induce 6 from Delhi. And the question is, what is his plan? Does he have a good move in 9 and a good reaction to 4847 and 5? Is he intending to block 5 and keep sufficient sweepers, maybe one of the cards for 9 and 7841, and say these are sufficient sweepers, I just control the bottom and I'm not going to have trouble here? That's possible. Those are very good sweepers for endgames. Um, Does he have some setup in 8 that gives counterplay? That seems unlikely. I'm curious what the plan is. I quite like moves in 4, and I could see a move in 4 being appealing there. Imagine 6284 and 6. You drop something in 4. Um, say 8247 and 4. Um, Something that's not comboable, because the 5 to the right is comboable. So let's avoid combos. 8247. And also, I think keeping 7537 is useful because that's the only thing that can take 6 from 9 with the 8 facing down. So say A247 and 4, Dully blocks 5. Now you can't start with 7841 and 7 because 5835 has the combo. But maybe actually you can because 5835 would then combo through 5. 4 is interesting. Yeah, I mean, Vid should have. There's lots of options, and I would think some of them hold ties, right? This looks dangerous to go into, but dangerous and specific, if you have seen a specific line, is a lot safer than dangerous and vague, where you kind of can't have seen a specific line and you're really hoping to sort of connect right with the position. So let's say 8247 and 4 is the reply. And let's say Delhi takes the plus in 5. So Delhi will be up 7-3, and Vid's only card will be in 1. But Vid can play 7537 in 9 there, grab 6, he's down 6-4, and 7841 easily sweeps enough of that endgame to hold the tie. And I think that's going to be true against like any move Delhi plays in 5. Now, he could play somewhere other than 5, and the square that appeals to me is 7, because 7841 could be a really dead card in Vid's hand. It doesn't have that recapture in 5. Hmm. Yeah, that could be a problem for my idea in 4. Maybe 4 is not the way. Let's see the position after Delhi goes in 6 and think a bit there. So one thing to check is something like 7537 and 9, inducing 4847 and 5. Do you have any particularly interesting tools there? Very much worth checking. I don't think you do. Your 7537 kind of sweeps 6158, but it sadly doesn't have the same against 5835 or a plus against 5835 if you want to sweep the bottom, and you're a lot more likely to sweep the bottom than anywhere else. So I don't think 9 is a very good idea. You could maybe do it with 8247, then you don't need a recapture at one point. But 7841 is playing really badly there. Okay, so another idea. What if you play 7841 and 5? You go up 6-4. Deli presumably plays, say, 5835 and 4, comboing you. You're down 7-3 again. We don't have as good sweepers as in the other line, but I still think we have good enough sweepers. We play 8247 in 7. We're down 6-4. They can't combo that, and 7537 does sweep them in the end, sufficiently to get the tie. So maybe we just maybe even though I thought like we want to play one of the cards for 9 in either 4 or 5 and keep 7841 and 7537, I'm really worried that if we play like 8247 and 4, which was my first idea, they go 7 and 7841 is just so bad in our hand that maybe there is a tie, but I'm not seeing it. So maybe we have to get rid of 7841. So yeah, 7841 and 5. Okay, he goes 8247. So a similar sort of thinking of I need to block 5, but keeping the two potential sweepers. I thought it was kind of nice to flip 6, but it probably doesn't matter because 7537 does so anyway, and it's not like Deli has trouble flipping back. So if 5835 in 4, Deli is up 7-3, but their vid sweepers are great. Right, their vid can play 7841 in 7, and he's golden. Golden meaning got a tie. Um, because 7841 is no longer covered, but he could also start with 7537 in 9, and that would also tie, and that's the more standard path to a tie. For instance, if 6158 and 4, Deli goes up 6-4, he can play 7537 and 9. And he will go 5-5. Deli has a double capture in 8, but he has a double capture back in 7. So this was probably the cleanest way, but we got to check a bunch of things. Does Deli have a setup in 7? Because 6158 and 7 exists. I think the answer is no. Vid can play 7841 and 4. And if Deli takes the setup, Vid is comboing back. In fact, one useful thing I haven't mentioned is because Vid's card in 5 is weak to 6, Vid has threats in 9. So probably the critical square for Deli is 9. Which I probably should have noticed before now. And probably 9 is a problem with my 7841 and 5 move because then I have no coverage of 9, and I'm not sure how I missed that until now. It's been a while. We're struggling. Vid's move makes a lot of sense to me. I think both players are playing better than my commentary is by a substantial margin today. Sometimes the margin is closer, sometimes it's further apart. Today, I suspect further apart. Okay. So if 6158 in 9, the obvious move is to capture an 8 with 7537 going up 6-4. Your 7841 covers anything in 4 sufficiently. You are comboed by 5853, but A, the combo doesn't flip very much, and B, the one thing it flips 5, you do flip back with 7841. And that should be a tie. 5-5, 6-4, 6-4, 5-5. Yeah, tie. If you stick something else there, like 4-8-4-7, I suspect Vid can play 7-8-4-1 and 8. He goes up 6-4 again, and he has sufficient captures. So I think Vid is held. I think he's held comfortably. And despite my initial all over the place analysis, I'm really pleased to see Vid finding a good move in 2. Because I think one thing his style of trying to create complications often did is it means he was taking positions where he was in danger and sort of increasing the number of ways his opponent could attack him rather than forcing the game into limited attacks where he should be able to hold the tie. And it's nice to see him doing so here against my recommendations, which were not very good. So that's cool. Deli, I think, just attacked this nicely. Um, Obviously, against a starter like this, there are a number of ways to attack it. It was hard for him to pose substantial challenges, and his initial card, in a way, didn't pose challenges, but in a way did, because Vid had kind of nowhere useful to set up on the board, and it gave Deli a really good setup for 6-2-8-4, which in turn gave him a setup in 5, and left him with cards that are pretty good for this endgame. All his cards that are more up than down are remaining for the endgame, which is exactly what you want. But level 6 is very clunky. So I have no complaints about this first game. I think it just, unless I'm like missing a win here or something, just I'm completely oblivious to, I think this has been a very fine first game to the match, and also one indicative of Delhi continuing to play just really, really well, and Vid having improved and covered weaknesses he used to have, which is really cool. And like, I think improving and getting better at things is just the best thing in the world. So, um, big fan of seeing Vid make a move that I am confident he would not have made a couple years ago. Deli does go 9. Vid will presumably go 8. And we will have a tie. I should put this in my records. So you're going to hear annoying typing sounds in a moment. Kefka finals. Oh, I should check what the rules are. What if the rules have been not what I thought at all? Level 6, same plus all random combo. Phew. Alright, vid 5-5 Delial. I'm guessing that. We'll adjust that if incorrect. And the game went 7-4-4-7-1, 3-7-6-6-3, 1-8-8-4-2, 6-2-8-4-6, 8-2-4-7-5, 6-1-5-8-9. Yeah, neat game. And I even finished my lunch. So, you know, big wins for all. Yeah, he does go an 8. Does how many moves tie here? 4-8-4-7 is a tie in 7, but not in 4. 5-8-3-5 is a tie, I believe, in both squares. So 3 out of 4 moves tie. Which means I would pick up 5-8-3-5 here, dodging the chance to misclick with 4-8-4-7. Especially given Deli has a history of misclicks in important tournament games. Oh, yeah. Let's skim the records, actually, see if I have any further memories of how we got here. In the first round, Vid played Stuff, and yeah, he played really well that round. He won 2-0. No, sorry, he won 2-1. Yeah, Stuff won a game. Yeah, Stuff got the first win on the match after a starter in 5 from Vid. 5-1-6. So Stuff won out of a J against Vid. Vid won the second game with a a side starter into another J. Interesting. A lot of J's. And in game 3, well, I guess it was game 4. In game 4, Vid won by attacking a corner starter immediately. Okay. Alright, so we presumably saw, well, we must have seen 5-8-3-5 and 7, and 7-8-4-1 and 4, with 4-8-4-7 remaining. And I can type in the rest of the hands. I really like this as a first game. I think this was a very good first game to the match. Hopefully a sign of things to come. Let's look at and Deli got a bye in round 1 because he and Turds were the 2 best players over the course of the year. Okay, round 2. Did Vid get some kind of bye here? All right, Delial played Tezuka. And yeah, as I recall, he just played this really masterfully and ended up winning 2-0. In the semifinals, Vid played Akiyama in a match we've only looked at like one game of, where I think Akiyama missed a tie on move 7, though a complex position. Uh, I don't think we've looked at the second game of that match, but a 6-4 starter, 6 and then 4, is very unusual. Um, and Akiyama ends up winning game 2. Game 3, Vid plays a corner starter. Akiyama attacks it, and Vid goes for a line, so 1-4-7. Akiyama can set up an L in 2. Vid blocks 5, much like he did here, and Vid gets a tie there. Akiyama starts with a corner starter. Vid plays adjacently. Akiyama blocks the between square. Vid sets up the L this time. Akiyama plays the distant move out of the L. So this is 9-3-6-2 and then 7. Pretty unusual. Leads to a tie here. Akiyama very good at finding moves there. I remember him playing a move like that against me in a tournament. I think it was a weekly open or whatever, chat tournament. And I had completely missed it, and it was the only tie in the position. It was a remarkable find. He's very good at moves in that position, that spot. The next game, Vid started with a side starter. Akiyama met it with the plug in 5. Vid goes for the J, meaning in this case 4-5-3, but just in general, meaning one card in the center, one card in the side, one card in the corner. The corner and the side cards are not touching. I call that a J. Vid came up with, Turds came up with the name, and they tie that one. Then the next one, they have opposite corners that used to be a weakness of Akiyama's, I think. Unusual move order. Vid goes 3, Akiyama goes 7. Vid builds out with 6, and Akiyama plays 1. The potentially big sort of odd setup move. Usually dangerous, but the solver says it ties a lot more than I'd expect. And they do tie that game. In the next game, they see opposite corners again. Again, Vid plays next to one of the corners played. And again, Akiyama goes in an extremely unusual square in 5. And again, Akiyama ties. And in the next game, sorry if this is unfollowable, Vid starts with a corner starter. Akiyama plays next to it. It looks like a non-capturing it next to it play. I'm just looking at the numbers, and sometimes I can interpret them. Sometimes I just see a wave of numbers. So I'm seeing 6-8-4-8-9, 9-3-4-8-6. And I go, 9-3-4-8. That can't take that card in 9, can it? And Vid sets up a line. There's an L. Vid blocks 5 again. So we're seeing, both in this game and in recent past games, and Vid goes on to win that game, Vid blocking 5 to great effect. Okay, we're going to end the video here. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to follow this match because this is a fairly busy day for me, but we're going to follow at least the next game in the next video.